Welcome to Bardo Buddies. So, decided this time to stream because, well, there are a number of things going on, and we only get together as a big group every couple months. And I know there's a lot of people that wanted to come that couldn't. So, and I thought we'd be doing some recapping and reporting about what's going on. So I thought it'd be a good idea to stream. So hello, anyone who's out there, and welcome. So I would like to start with kind of a recapping where we've been, where we are, where we're going. I do want to acknowledge all of the past groundwork over the years that's been laid by many people interested in this subject, many that I don't know, lots of efforts that I'm not aware of, but people like Mary Woods has been working on this for years. The late Jean Ellen Herzog, Jeannie Mooneyham. I actually talked to Jean Ellen shortly before, or a few months before I did the November program, and we were going to get together and didn't have a chance, and then she became sick. So, and of course our dear Eric Fromme, who's worked with Mary and the Zen community presenting the death and dying programs. Am I too close?
You're a little bit too close.
Okay. How's this? Okay. Who else haven't I mentioned? Karen Fenton. Who else? So many.
Chosen Bay, who joined last year.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, she was actually the one. Chosen Babe was the one that she invited us to come and work with her for their Art of Wisdom program. And I need to contact her and find out if she wants any contribution from us this year now that Eric's gone.
Right.
I haven't done that yet.
Yeah. Yeah. So, so there's been lots of interest over the years, but I also have to acknowledge it's a very hard thing to keep rolling, keep a lot of energy about it. I know myself, as interested as I am, and as much as I want to feel fully prepared, wow, it's like pulling teeth. I mean, there's just so many other things, and it's like, well, dying, well, that kind of gets the bottom of the barrel.
That'll happen later.
Right. So anyway, I really appreciate people's efforts in the past, and I'm hoping we can keep the ball rolling this time around. So back in November, this is our latest effort. We started with 3 Saturday classes, trying to develop more familiarity, taste some of the many different issues around death and dying, thinking about preparations, building some resources, trying to figure out how we can support each other, and build a program here at KCC that supports people in the process of dying and death, which of course we all are in the process of it. If you're born, you're on your way. So, out of that program that we started in November, and our meetings in January and February, a few things have developed. So one thing that I keep reminding myself to keep updated is we have this binder that has all of the meditations, contemplations, forms for advance directives, lists of things to be prepared for, sample funeral plans, sample spiritual wills, and things like that. So anyway, this is a resource we'll just keep building on and have available for people as needed. So the last time we came together, we broke into 4 groups. Since this is a wide arena of interest, and so we felt that breaking it into smaller chunks would make it more easy to get the work done and to get involved with whatever we're particularly interested in. So, so the first group was dealing with practical preparedness. This, I think, is the hardest one to keep up the energy for. I know it's been very hard for me, as motivated as I feel, just, to sit down and get it done. But I have to say that out of the meetings here and the people here, I've actually made some progress. So one of the things, and Bob Wilson isn't here, I guess, but he kind of led that group on preparations. And he came up with some notes and some resources. So this is a fabulous book. And it's The Quicken Will Maker, and also includes an online Living Trust program. It virtually answers all the questions and many more that I've had. Plus it has a software program and guides you through many different forms, not just the will and the living trust, but advanced directives and letters and all the things that you need to prepare. It's $50. It sure beats $600 for a simple will with a lawyer. And it's so straightforward. And so I really, anybody who hasn't done that, and maybe everybody else is ready, I've done a will, but it's so inadequate and outdated that that this is important.
You can do these things like on LegalZoom. You can also do it on LegalZoom, either for a little more money with their help or just doing it on your own. And generally the way that works is you're answering questions. And so it's not like you have to know it,
Right.
what to do next. It's you're being prompted. And then you have the document at the end. And generally it was very inexpensive.
Yeah.
So
That's where I did my last one. The problem was for me is there wasn't a way to really ask questions. So this is like a really good reference for that. But yeah, it does work.
So you could use that book and LegalZoom.
Well, this has the equivalent, only probably more because it has all of the forms and documents. Yeah. Yeah, many resources out there actually. This is a fairly popular one and well-known, kind of widely spread. So out of thinking about this, and another little trigger that got me going was Melinda Bell and her husband Dave Howard. They asked Peter and myself to meet them for a lunch and then be witnesses for their will. So I thought, that's a good idea. That sounds like a deadline for me. I think I'll get her done, and then they can witness mine. So it's things like that help, this community to help trigger getting things done. So what I had to do for myself, and again, I don't know if anybody's having this problem of getting things done like I am, but I had to just sit down and make a list and a timeline. And I stole I stole a title from Adele Hilson, and she calls her stuff grave concerns. So, which I thought was great. I like it. So I made my list and timeline for grave concerns. So this is personal, but I think, there might be some people that are interested. It could, help give a little framework outlined for getting the things done yourself if you're interested. So just, for example, I had to decide, okay, what's the most important, highest priority? If I die today, what do I want to be certain that I've done? And obviously, the will, the revocable living trust for my kids, that needs to be done. And then I'd say, well, what does that require? And da-da-da-da-da. And then a timeline for getting that done. And then, well, what's the next thing? Well, handling of the body. What do I want done? So, and then I asked some questions and answered them myself, and then put a timeline for that. And then so on down the list. So anyway, this was really helpful for me and kind of made me a little bit more excited about it. And also, I plan to put my version of this on my refrigerator door as a reminder. So if anybody's interested in, that little... And that also had some inspiration from Cynthia, who had printed out a little doing the paperwork kind of guideline, so that helped me with that. Thank you all for your inspirations. So that was the first group, and I don't know if there are any people here present that were at that group. Bob isn't here, and he kind of guided it, so we'll see about that when it comes time to break out. So the second was a study group, and this, I think Cynthia took the lead on this, and it's a pretty eager, ready group. They've already been through or almost done with one book, right? Frank Ostasoski's. This might be the group to bring us movie nights, relevant visiting speakers, hot topic things, I don't know. Discussions. Do you want to say anything more about that, Cynthia?
Yeah, you gave us the warning that we were supposed to report. So I'm just the point person, as in, for streaming. This is Cynthia Huntington. I'm the point person for KCC with email and other things like that, just the organizational side of it. But basically, we meet once a month. It's settled into being the third Thursday afternoons. We were meeting at Sylvia's house. She made it very gracious and welcome, but we're moving to KCC, and It's Tuesday. Thank you. So another group member's more awake than I am. Third Tuesday afternoons here at KCC, and
What time in the afternoon did you meet?
it's 3 to 4:30. But there's, in the main newsletter, is much more information about the group. Basically, it's not a book club. We choose a book right now. We've been choosing a book, and we're discussing it, but it's basically a springboard that gets us talking and sharing and supporting each other about what comes up, what has happened, what might, we're not a support group like a care circle, but it supports our practice and supports each other. Yeah. And yes, like Linda said, it's like we plan to host Dharma films and other things. We rotate facilitators at each meeting, and we rotate presenters. But Linda is our first presenter, Linda Logan.
So we started with the 5 invitations, and this book was developed by Frank,
Ostaseski.
Ostaseski? Anyway, that person. From his years as a Buddhist practitioner and teacher and his work at the Zen Hospice Project in San Francisco. And woven throughout the book are teachings on impermanence, bodhicitta, compassion, being present, observing our habitual patterns, emptiness, and experiencing our helplessness. Right off the top, he tells us that death is messy, and later on in the book, he questions our myth about a good death. He relates much of his wisdom through stories about the people who came to the Hospice Project, his Buddhist practice, and his own trials when he's had a severe heart attack. The book is really accessible. We all are totally enjoying it. It's a very engaging read. And the mode of our discussions often centered around what touched us, what stories landed, and what spoke to us deeply. So I have a couple of examples. For one person, it was the story of the Italian man Lorenzo, who came to the Zen hospice with despair and hostile attitude. And Frank asked him matter-of-factly, "What do you want?" He said, "Spaghetti." "Spaghetti? Well, we make really good spaghetti at our place. Why don't you come live with us?" For this person in our group, Frank was so respectful and down to earth. He met everyone with his humanity, not with his toolkit of hospice worker. Later on in the book, there was a long discussion on the inner critic. He wrote, "The problem is that desire to change yourself is fundamentally a form of aggression towards yourself." So for the person in our group, she hadn't thought of it that way, but she found it was true. She started to think of all the times and ways she wanted to change. There was always an underlying harsh attitude. The book had that effect on us. It offered a different way to view something, to examine our beliefs and actions. Another person found this meaningful. Again and again, there were pointers to the importance of curiosity, how it's not just fun, but it's a crucial skill. A story she took special delight in was the preschoolers heading into the woods, tasked with finding dead things. They would happily collect for show and tell the fallen leaves, broken branches, a rusty old car part, and occasionally the bones of a crow or small animal. At their young age, the children had no fear, only curiosity. In the same way, curiosity makes sense of this quote: "Suffering generally occurs as a chain reaction, stimulus, thought, reaction." So the person in our group pondered, if I bring curiosity to the party early, arriving with the stimulus, this could lessen my suffering. We can begin to let go of our identities by getting curious. And the last for myself, it's the subtitle that captures an important experience of the book. And that subtitle is Discovering What Death Can Teach Us About Living. So now I really examine my daily life activities, my thoughts, my beliefs, and ask, will this help me at the moment of my death? I'm aware I don't have that much time to waste. So as Frank offers, don't wait. Welcome everything, push away nothing. Bring your whole self to the experience. Find a place of rest in the middle of things. Cultivate don't know mind. Those are the 5 invitations.
Thanks, Linda.
And it's him talking. You can get the book on Audible, and it's him reading his book. What's the name again?
Five Invitations by Frank
Ostaseski.
Yeah. And Friday, let's see, the 3rd Tuesday in May is when we'll finish this book. We're reading the 4th and the 5th one, Finding the Calm Space and Bringing Don't Know Mind. Yeah.
Thank you. Also, good place to remind of the online retreat that's coming up next week, and he will be one of the teachers. Very fine set of teachers. No death, no fear. Free. You just sign up, and then you can go to the link anytime, but it's going to be, I don't know, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday or something next week, or Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, I'm not sure. Oh, you have to sign up before.
You have to sign up by midnight on the 3rd.
But then you can listen to them.
And then you can listen to it
anytime. Right.
But it doesn't start until the 4th at 5 p.m.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Okay, good. So talking about movies, also something I wanted to mention, and I think, Linda, you were one who brought it to the attention on the community list, the movie Living, or the video Living While Dying.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That was me, but yes,
Yeah, I think it was you. Yeah. Anyway, you said this looks like a good movie, and but it just so happened that John Jennings had been in touch with the producer and referred her to me, so I talked to her and watched and previewed the movie. And so she's doing showings. So she did a showing in Portland in February, and now she's kind of showing at churches or places that are interested. So so she's ready and willing to do a showing here. It's very nice. Yeah, it's really, really quite.
What's the name of her producer?
Yeah, it's Kathy. No, I don't remember her last name. I can sort of see it, but I can't say it. So, anyway, that can be coming up, but probably after Kempo's visit, sometime late summer or fall. Also, I have Dying Wish. This is a dying doctor's decision to stop eating and drinking and die with grace. And this is very well thought of, beautifully made film. Another something that we can think of. How to Die in Oregon. This was very popular, winner of the Sundance Film Festival, but talking or following people through with their decision to do death with dignity. And then the Tibetan Book of the Dead. This is great, beautiful.
Are those things that we can
Popcorn and movies. Yeah, it's part of the resources. Yeah. Okay, and then let's see. So that was 2, the study group, and the 3rd group is practice group.
We met about 2 weeks ago at Salidra's house and had silence to begin with, and then a guided meditation on the 5 elements. And then we had a discussion about what we each of us wanted from the group. And the consensus is that we will meet here at KCC monthly. The next meeting is May 14th at 11 in the morning.
Oh, it's not 1 to 3.
Am I wrong?
Or 1 to 3.
Or 1 to 3, whichever you all know.
That's what I had in my calendar.
Yeah, I think you're right. The 14th, it's Monday, the 14th from 1 to 3. And everyone is welcome to come.
Oh, I have one.
Okay.
And it's here in case
here at KCC, and it'll be monthly. Except when Kempo's here, we probably will skip. I think, yeah.
Well, speaking of that, I mean, we are so blessed to have him, and we're going to have a whole day of teachings on Bardo's death and dying on June 9th. So, yeah, be there, be square. Okay, great. Diane, did you want to say something about the Onion Rinpoche's?
That's the wrong book.
Yeah.
Onion Rinpoche, 4 of us, Salidra, Carolyn, Linda, and I went to a retreat in Washington State with Onion Rinpoche, who was a Nyingma lineage holder, on confidence with dying. And it's a series of 3 retreats that'll happen over a year, in which you learn, depending on what he teaches at that particular retreat. We did a lot of POA, also some wind energy breathing and things like that. I found it extremely helpful, and really invigorated my practice and helped me, prepare mentally a lot more for death. I was kind of teasing Rinpoche at lunch one day about coming to Portland to teach this series, and then he took me up on it. So he is looking into coming here to teach it next year, if there's enough interest. And for Rinpoche and his wife and assistant to come here for the 3 retreats, there would have to be at least 35 people who would commit to the 3 retreats. So if you're interested at all, please let me know so I can make a list of interest. It doesn't commit you in any way. I can send you more information about it, or you can look on poafoundation.org, PHOWA foundation.org. You can look up Rinpoche at onionrinpoche.com. And what he would do would be give a public talk or a very short retreat for people with general interest, and from that group you would get to meet him and see if you'd be interested in the 3 focused retreats. Then he will sign up people from that public talk. So if you're interested in any of it, please let me know, either by email or whatever. Thanks.
Yeah, and this is a great book. I used it in the preparations for the classes in November. Dying with Confidence, a Tibetan Buddhist Guide to Preparing for Death. Lots of good stuff. Okay, and the 4th group was caring circles, and Mary Woods kind of
Yeah, so I summarized our notes from our meeting on the 7th. And I'll try not to just read these verbatim because that's always not so great. But in general, we the first time we met, it was so brief that it was really hard to kind of get a hold on exactly what we wanted to do. I mean, we all had different, sort of the same ideas and then a little bit of diversity, which is good. So that was, part of it was just kind of like, winnowing it down so that it made more sense and was kind of workable as a starting point. So that's always helpful. The one thing that we did all agree to, just because it's good to have some lines around things sometimes, we agreed that our activities would not be a substitute for hospice or other medical service, but meant to be an additional support for Sangha members and their families. And that might make it less intimidating for people that want to help in this way, if they don't feel like you don't have to have a ton of knowledge to begin with. It's good to have some, maybe, but start where you are. So ideas that we discussed, and things that we might do. Support that is provided could be both spiritual and comfort measures while visiting individuals whose health is declining or are actually dying. So this is kind of, I felt like we did all sort of jive on this, is that our view is that the act of caring for somebody is actually part of your spiritual practice, but there might be formal practice involved with that person while you were there. Support might take place in a variety of settings: home, care facility, hospitals, etc. Peter had a nice suggestion that the role might be considered to be both like a hospice volunteer or a Bardo buddy or Dharma friend. So kind of a nice amalgam of the two. This role could include practicing with the individual, provide basic comfort measures during a visit if needed, provide brief respite for family or caregivers during a visit, which even a short visit, as my years in doing home care, like even an hour is sometimes a big deal for somebody who's tired. You know, they may just to say, I'm going to just go take a nap, you know, while you're here. So the next steps that we might take, and these would be things that we would want to offer to the greater Sangha, so hopefully there would be some interest. Offer a class on basic comfort measures at the bedside, and that would be something that would be intended to be more fairly basic, but with the idea being that you're not a full-time caregiver, but it might give you a little confidence when you go to visit somebody that maybe you could do something helpful if they were thirsty, or they maybe needed to move a little bit, or you know, some lotion on their hands. So that I found that a lot of times people were afraid to touch the person, and it was just because nobody really kind of helped them have a little comfort around that. And then you find out, oh, that's not that hard to do, you know, or maybe it is hard to do for somebody. So that's also good information. I think all of that is just getting information about yourself and how you relate to these things. Identifying Sangha members who might be interested in helping in this way, and possibly, this is maybe a way down the road type of thing, a pool of people who would be willing to help in this way. Encourage members to think about, and I would say members as a larger community, not just us, to think about who might be in their own care circle, and start conversations as a way of planning and thinking about one's own death and resources. I know there's one Sangha member that this person and I have kind of both said, you know, I'm gonna be there for you. So you might think about people that live close by, if they're a friend, or how to develop those relationships with each other so you could be that support. We're another possibility, because people are wondering about these things too, have a social worker come and talk about caregiving resources. There's a great book that some of us have been reading about Caring Circles, written by Ann Kaysen, who actually lives in the area, although I think she has some health problems, Willa was saying. But she has an associate that might be willing to come and talk to us.
She's going to be joining us next month.
She is.
And she's in the book group now.
Awesome. Okay.
Definitely. I talked to her about it, and she's going to bring if you ask Anne, she'll come.
Mm-hmm.
And
So which group? So when is she coming to the book group?
Mm-hmm. She's been coming. She came to the book group.
Oh, I didn't know. Okay.
The May death dining.
Okay, great. So that's the one.
It's
Okay.
June. We've been doing it every other month, yeah.
Okay.
Maybe we should do it May instead, huh?
Yeah, maybe May. Well, anyway, that's what I'm curious about that, because that was one of the things too that had to kind of meld it into the way we were thinking, is that anyway, that's somebody I would love to connect with. So if I could find out when she's actually going to meet with you, and if I'm around, I would love to join, and maybe some other people from our group would like to.
Well, Tuesday the 19th of May, we will have the group.
Okay.
Tuesday the 19th of May, we will have the group
Tuesday
here
the 19th?
at KCC from 3 to 4:30, and she will participate because she is the thank you, facilitator.
She's not available for 2 months. She's not going to be.
Who is she now? I'm confused.
This person we're talking
Oh, okay. Okay.
Maybe move it to July, like somebody else said.
Wait and ask her.
Okay, well, at some
We'll
point,
figure it.
we'll. So anyway, that was something that we were interested in because I've been reading the book, and it's been very. She's had some great insights about that, and some practical ones, and otherwise. Okay, connect with Sangha members who have assisted other Sangha members at end of life, because there's a few here, like besides myself, that have done this kind of work in different ways, and what worked and what didn't, what was difficult, etc. And then again, members working on putting together a list items we would like to have available at end of life for ourselves. So like the idea around the Dharma box, some of the other practices and things. And these might be filed somewhere at KCC, as some have discussed, or as well as having copies at home. And the one thing that we also, again, did all agree with is that we are interested in being able to share Dharma practice with the dying, and so we would like to participate in some of the practices, prayers, teachings that the Bardo Buddy groups focusing on these other areas are working with. So maybe I've missed some emails, but we hope to connect with them and either share what they are learning or doing, if not actually able to join them when they meet. So anyway, so we'd like to be kind of in a loop if that's possible, or if you can at least loop me in and I can loop in the other members or something. Because we feel like that it was like, for us, it was like a no-brainer in a way. That of course you might practice with them. It's your Dharma sister, brother. You know, it was like, why wouldn't you?
Right.
So, unless, I didn't want that.
Yes, thank you, Mary. Well, there is a lot of overlap amongst these groups, and that's part of the function, I think, of this larger regular meeting to kind of keep updated about what other people are doing, and we're just kind of beginning and trying to figure it out. But no, I agree. I want to be a part of all of the groups.
And you can't do everything, but
Right.
like at least like, oh, you're reading that might be helpful to read, which is good to know the different books.
Yeah.
Add it to your arsenal.
Thank you. Okay, so we have 3 or 4 more meetings planned for this year for the bigger group. Does every 2 months seem like the right interval for that?
If we're meeting in between or smaller groups, yeah.
Yeah, okay, good. Good, we'll keep it at that. And the June meeting would be scheduled for the 23rd, and that would be well after Kempo. So I think we can still keep that as our plan. Okay, well, I like to do a little practice together.
Julie, can I
Yeah.
share something that's going on currently? My oldest sister is dying. She's on hospice, and one of the things that is interesting is that her son, who has a fairly important job, was able to become her primary caregiver because he can do most of his work from home. And so it's he who I've been talking to. But she and I have not had a close relationship over our lives. And what I've been most recently experiencing is that now that she's this far down the road, I'm feeling as if I don't have anything to talk with her about, because we don't have, if we'd had a lifelong relationship, I think what I'd probably be doing is saying, remember when, and that sort of thing. But now I call her up and, how are you feeling today? Fine. That sort of feels to me like the end of the conversation, except that Elvita helpfully said, well, I could ask her who visited her today or who was going to visit her the next day. And so that's something for me to be aware of. But I just thought I'd share that with the group since it's something that's going on currently.
It sounds like a place for curiosity. Yeah. What? Anything else before we leap into practice? Okay. So what we're going to do is refuge, and then a contemplation of the 4 profound reminders, which I will lead, and then we'll do a Tonglen meditation for a few minutes. So, thinking about taking refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. I mean, this is our part of our aspiration to loosen our grip on our worldly refuges and go for refuge to what is beyond that, and what is our higher aspiration. So, to the degree that we're able to do this, to let go, the easier it will be to let go at the time of death. So it's helpful to remind ourselves that we could die at any moment, and maybe even imagine it as we're doing this practice, the practice of refuge. Imagine that you are in the process of dying or close to your deathbed, that death is very near as you recite the refuge prayer. I've discovered recently in doing just my own daily practice says that trying on this cloak of being dying or near death or at the time of death has injected an incredible amount of juice into the practice as I do it. So it's really very interesting. So I thought it would be nice to just try that as we do the practices this afternoon. So we'll start with refuge, and we'll do it first in English and then Tibetan, the one I like to do. Do you have copies of this somewhere in, the, because I didn't, not the, yeah, we don't keep copies of that. Okay, so I have some. That's probably enough. You have enough. So first in English. In the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly, I take refuge until enlightenment. Through the merit of generosity and the other perfections, may I accomplish Buddhahood for the benefit of beings. Maybe we'll do this all actually 3 times in English, since we're holding that view of being in the presence of our death. So 2 more times. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly, I take refuge until enlightenment. Through the merit of generosity and the other perfections, may I accomplish Buddhahood for the benefit of beings. In the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly, I take refuge until enlightenment. Through the merit of generosity and the other perfections, May I accomplish Buddhahood for the benefit of beings. And now, just let your bodies settle. Find a comfortable position. Allow yourself to relax. Bring some attention to your breath. Let yourself be aware of the flow of thoughts, feelings, sensations, without getting involved in them. When you find yourself clinging to thoughts, just return to the breath without feeling pressure. And think, as I am going through this, and you're contemplating that you're in the process of dying. So, having settled into your body, please remember how precious this human life is. During this life, you have encountered so much that has been helpful, including good teachers, the possibility of having a spiritual life, and teachings that inspire and guide you. Many people have helped you, and you have had the joy of helping others. Although you have suffered, you have also had many moments in your life that have been good. Please appreciate the preciousness of your life, what you might be able to realize through it, and how you may be able to help others as well. And now, as you are dying, contemplate the truth of impermanence. Look at your mind. Every thought and feeling that you have ever had has changed in one way or another. Your body, too, has and is constantly changing. It will soon die. Buddha, Christ, Muhammad, all the great teachers of the past have died. Everything in the phenomenal world will change, and one day, sooner or later, will cease to exist. Impermanence is real. Death is inevitable. Now, contemplate the truth of cause and effect. You yourself are a result of an endless chain of causes and effects involving your parents and ancestors stretching back through time. Before your human ancestors, there were animal and plant ancestors. And before the ancestors of mammal and the blue-green algae, there were elements. This chain of cause and effect is endless. Your relations are endless. And your past actions are like a shadow that follows you everywhere. Your future is also being laid down at this very moment. Consider that kindness and compassion give rise to good effects. Aggression and greed give rise to suffering. Do what you can to decrease suffering for yourself and others. Realize that you can purify your life by doing good for others and by atoning for the suffering you've caused yourself and others. You can transform this suffering into wisdom. Realize as you lie dying the truth of consequences. Finally, consider the truth of suffering: birth, old age, sickness, death. Getting what you do not want, not getting what you do want, and losing that which you cherish. So often you have felt that this or that will make you happy, will finally bring you peace. You might have worked very hard for these things: a good relationship, a nice house, a satisfying job. Yet sooner or later you will lose all these things. This is actually happening very soon now. They themselves can also cause you to suffer. Contemplate what it would be like to live a life without fear. And know that deathless enlightenment is here at this very moment. Can you relax your grip on what you think is real and open to whatever arises? Can you see through the illusion of past, present, and future? Can you relax and open to things as they are right now? Can you plunge into life or death at this very moment and accept and learn from all of it? Let confidence arise in the truth of the present moment, no matter what. Be there for it. So now, for the next 10 minutes or so, we'll engage in Tonglen, which is the practice of taking and sending. Is everybody familiar with that? So you imagine that you are actually dying or near death as you're doing this practice. And you will imagine breathing in a cloud of dark smoke, all the suffering, your own suffering and that of all others, inviting it into your heart and breathing it into your heart. And then imagine breathing out white light, radiating all of those qualities you hold precious: your lovingness, kindness, peacefulness, joy. And imagine the relief and the joy that this white light brings to all of those suffering, including yourself. So we'll do this now for the next several minutes. I'm sure I didn't need to mention this because you're probably all seasoned at doing this practice. But I remember when I first started doing it, I would give myself headaches trying to breathe all the dark stuff in and all the light stuff out on the same breath, be working my lungs like a bellows. So I've long since learned to, do several breaths or breathing of the dark stuff, and then several breaths of paying attention to the out breath and breathing the light stuff. Get fewer headaches that way. Okay. So, is a break needed? Break needed, anybody? No? Great. Well, so I put a break into the schedule just in case we needed it. So the next thing on the agenda was going to be the small group breakout. And so I guess I have a question whether we have enough representatives of those small groups, or if there's a different way of gathering and talking more about these groups. So I think I put this in the agenda. So this, where are we going, and some stated goals that have come out of our gatherings and discussions. And so I've noted them down so we could refer to them in our groups. So I might just say them out loud right now, and then we can decide how we want to do about what we want to do for the rest of the hour. So, some stated goals: be prepared to offer support and appropriate Buddhist practices during the dying and after-death processes for our Sangha members and potentially for others in the greater community. This has come up a few times. We've had phone calls for people requesting services or prayers or ideas for their family member who was a Buddhist and would have wanted that, who was not necessarily a part of our Sangha. So this has come up a few times. So it's nice to have some, ideas about how we address that. Another goal: to develop, maintain, and regularly update resources to help people plan and feel prepared in practical ways for death, both in written materials and in having regular conversations. Another, to develop care teams or circles, both individually for ourselves and each other, and growing skills to be available for others within our own community and possibly beyond. To remind ourselves day by day, moment by moment, that death is always our companion. I think we need each other to do that. Encourage and support each other to do the work of love for our friends and family by being as fully prepared for our deaths as possible. Have some regularly scheduled group practice time with focus on those practices, especially helpful to remind us we will die and to familiarize us with the process. And then I added that we all wanted more teachings on the subject of death and dying and bardos. And we have that coming up. So what I had in mind was that if we broke into our 4 groups, we would take a look at those goals and see how our particular group was addressing some or any of those, and whether or not there were other things that haven't been stated. or that maybe were stated and I didn't pick up on, that we want to add to this. So more as a way of knowing that we're staying on track of what we came together to do, and that we're all connected to those tracks. So I don't know, with this smaller group and with a number of people missing and a couple of new people, how would that best be handled? Do we still want to break into these 4 little groups, or do we want to try and do that as the bigger group? Maybe take one group at a time and yeah, Cynthia.
As you were reviewing the goals, and also thinking about how there are few people, I was wondering, what if we just kind of spoke now to reminding ourselves day by day, moment by moment, that death is always our companion, by if we just offered ways that we see that.
Mm-hmm. Good idea.
Oh. Well, I guess I'm thinking again of the kids in that book when they were told to go out and find dead things that we look at all the time, leaves, twigs. We don't think of them as, or car parts, we don't think of them as dead, but yeah, they are. And another thing that popped into my mind was with someone on a retreat who said he had heard that one way of looking at our breathing, every breath is a mini dying. Every breath out, and maybe others have heard that, but it got, that's been a few years now, but once in a while it pops up. And I think about, well, every night that I go to sleep is a death. Every morning I wake up, it's a birth. Every time I space out and I'm not really present, that's kind of a death. Anyway, those were things that came to my mind. But
thank you. So, do we have consensus that this is a process, just going over some of these goals, and maybe as we're thinking about it, adding others that I didn't think of, or does this work? Mm-hmm. General? Okay.
The meditation that you led us in,
Yes.
Is that available in written form in someone's book, or? It's really lovely, and it's something that I think I could possibly use sometimes at night,
The reminders, the contemplation,
yeah,
the four.
Whole thing.
Yeah, it came out of Joan Halifax's book, and it's actually, it's one of the things that are in here. So there are copies of everything there that can just be copied off if you want.
Thank you.
In fact, I actually have extra copies of that if you want one.
Okay, I'd love it. Thank you.
Did you send us an email copy of, I know you sent us a bunch of things in email. Was that one of them?
Yep.
So I'm just confirming that Julie did give us copies in an email if we wanted to print them.
That amongst many others. Lost in cyberspace. Maybe I didn't bring them with me. Yeah, no, I didn't bring them with me. But
Julie, that's one of the projects that I'd offer to help you if there was a spot on the web where we can post things and then we don't have to find them in emails, but we can just download them as we want or read them online. But it's waiting on a spot on the website.
Is that you, Peter?
Not really, but it's something we can do. It's something we've been talking about there's so many ways to do it. It's just hard to choose one.
This summer after Rinpoche might be a nice time to work on that. Putting your binder online. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, great idea. So maybe we'll have a little subgroup for.
I just want to say again, Julie, thank you for this group. So we're the practice group, and I think one of the things that's so important to me about living like I'm dying, living as I'm dying, and to hold that as a moment-to-moment awareness more and more. For me, the practice, the meditations are really important to me, and I've recorded the 5 elements, the dissolving of the 5 elements, and the Joan Halifax, and when I go to sleep at night, I play those recordings, and it's really changing my insides, my way of being in the world, and my practices, as you mentioned, Julie. But when these experiences that we have when somebody, when we get offended by something that somebody says to us, and it's like, I go, I am 5 elements. Thank you for reminding me of that. And I just take that moment, and that was always a lovely concept, and my experience of the practicing is bringing that into, life, and it's becoming habitual, and I feel so grateful for it. So, I'm saying that because for those of you who are interested in the practicing group, that is one of our intentions, to do these meditations. And Linda, I think, was it you, Linda? You put one online somewhere? I don't know. But the Joan Halifax one?
I don't know where to put it. So
we have it. Yeah, that's what our focus is, and we welcome your dying participation. We hope you're dying to come and practice with us.
An experience that we're all just stardust. Thanks. No.
Well, I have sort of a question that's, when like being in the present moment is one of the things we kind of say as well. And like when I remember to breathe and watching my breath, it's kind of helps me be in the present moment. But I don't associate that with being aware of death at my side. I was just trying to think about that and wondering what does that mean to people? Because being in the present moment, it means totally alive to me. Being present with death doesn't have that meaning for me right now. And I was wondering if other people see it as 2 different things. Being in the present moment versus being with death. So I just want to raise that question.
So one of the ways I use this practice is like just driving on the interstate. And the near misses, I think, oh my God, I could have died in that instant. Am I ready for this? So it makes me awake, makes me pay attention more, and think about things that I contemplate about. Are all my affairs settled? And are there any, relationships that I need to work on right now? So that's how I use thinking about death, as being awake now.
Thinking about what Cynthia was saying about the lapses of attention or other ways in which there are momentary deaths, made me realize that, in response to Peter's question, that on a certain level, the way that we think about self and the illusory nature of that, I guess that's what I think about in the way that they're both present. The present moment is, consciousness is also an illusion, and so that's the way I relate to that question of how they are similar or the same, maybe.
I'd like to be awake at my death. I mean, for me, that's part of it, is being fully present and aware and awake as it happens, whatever happens, the interval. No death, no fear, right?
So that makes me think about one of the things that came up in the 5 invitations, where we have this idea of the death that we want. We may be in a coma, not conscious in the way that I would choose. I would not prefer that. So I think one of the ways I'm looking at things is when I get tied up in my activities, and maybe I put off doing a practice that I said I wanted to do, then I'm thinking, oh, would this help me? Would doing this little daily or fun or whatever distraction, would that be helpful? Or the other thing I've been thinking about is when I have certain thoughts or feelings about people and I'm not really happy that that's happening, I've been trying to work with curiosity to see, like, what's going on there. Because I can say, well, I don't want to think that, but I am thinking that. So those are some of the ways I've been working with this.
I'm a little more aware after just visiting my nephew who's dying of esophageal cancer. He's 31 years old. I brought him up in Sangha before, but I just came back from visiting him, and it's almost like the luxury of having conversations like this. It feels like a luxury right now. For him and them, there's a lot of fear, and even talk of hospice now for him, which would just make things more comfortable. He and his partner feel like the family is giving up on it by even bringing that up. So it's a tricky area to look at him and be with him when he's a walking skeleton, basically, and having so much discomfort. And words aren't going to help, but I do words with my brother and sister-in-law, but not with him. So I'm not sure this is a question or a comment, but it's kind of a conversation. It feels like, which is a good thing. I think conversations like this are, I appreciate having sessions for me now, because I'm not sure how I'm going to be feeling if I'm in a different place in my life. Yeah, Mary, help.
Having been in that situation, it is very difficult. Oops, excuse me, falling over. And people do often feel like hospice is you're giving up. And I suppose you're giving up something. So it's, in some ways it's true. And what I would suggest and what I would do when, I was a hospice nurse, so they would have decided to do it, that it would be a lot of, sometimes there'd be a lot of resistance between patient and others, could be varied. And I would just have to be with that and just be okay with it. It's very uncomfortable, but it actually tells you something. You learn something. This was one of the reasons why this is the stuff I missed about doing hospice, is that I had to come up against my stuff on a regular basis. And it's not much fun, but you really learn a lot, and eventually you're grateful for it, but it's really hard in the moment. But I remember being with somebody who was young, and sounds like your family member, just walking skeleton. And he did not want to admit he was dying, and it was obvious to everybody around him, and it was very painful for them, obviously, too. But they finally just had to let it go and just let him be there, and you don't have to talk about it. You don't have to mention hospice. You're just with them. So, and I said, how you doing? Oh, I'm doing good. And I just said, oh, I'm so glad, You just whatever it is, it's just it's sort of okay. And even if they're mad, it's okay. This gets to be kind of bizarre sometimes. It's just sort of whatever's there, you're just there too. And you just watch the stuff come up and subside. Watch it come up and subside. And there's nothing wrong. I think the only thing that would be wrong would be trying to talk them into thinking a different way. So that's the only thing. That's when I would learn, this is what I want to happen. That's not what's going to happen. So, this person's doctor even came and tried to help them understand, and it was this is just where he's at, so you're just being there. I love you, and your family know that you're there in the ways that you can be, which when you're far away, it's not always so easy. Don't feel bad about that either. Everybody can't be there. But yeah, it's just difficult, and that's the hard part sometimes. This is not going to get easier. It's going to be like this, but sometimes by letting go of how we want it to be, it actually makes it easier, because then they're kind of there's not all this tension around. They want me to think this, but I don't think that. And it's we don't care what you think. We do care what you think, and we aren't going to worry about what we think. We're going to let you just be. So I don't know if that makes sense.
I am talking by reading a book, not by experience. But in How to Die or Being Mortal, this person says his father is sick and he refuses hospice. Then they bring a nurse, hospice nurse, into helping him with the medicines, because being a doctor, he was triggering with them. Instead of 1 pill every 4 hours, it will be 2 every 12 or something like that. And the presence of this external person helping with the tracking of things, external I mean by not being a family member, help the person relax and be considered, taken care of, being seen. And that was very helpful in the relation. I mean, it was written by a person that went through it, but I didn't have that experience. I just thought it could be useful.
And that's the tricky part. Also, because she's not his doctor, but she's a doctor, she knows what would be helpful. And so she's got a bigger balancing act than they both do, because they're both doctors. So it's kind of like the good and the bad of being a physician. You know too much, and you can't live someone else's life, and he's still living, and it's his choice, and it's his. You don't take the last autonomy away from, and she knows, they know.
Sometimes so. I would say, I'm so sorry, I wish it was different. Yeah. So I'm so sorry, I wish it was different, or I can see why you really hate this. Yeah. Or once in a while I'd say something like, this really sucks, doesn't it? Yeah. You know, if you knew the person well enough. Because it did suck. It is.
Come on, we all want a good death, but we don't always know that we're going to have that choice, that we will be. And so this preparation stuff is helpful to us, and it can also be helpful in being present with others wherever they are at. So, thank you.
There is a specialty called palliative care, which is for chronic and long-term illness. And you don't have to be terminal. Okay, because that can help a lot.
What feels like the final, But so he's got, the resources are there, he's got good care. It's just sort of a recognition of, I think I may have just brought it up, and I do appreciate the comments and the reminders for me to be aware that just being there and just loving him and loving them and being open to whatever surfaces is good enough, right? I mean, and I can't make it different, So that acceptance, for me, is part of this process too. So, thank you.
Which one of those 5 invitations addresses just this? Do you remember which one?
That came up in the last session, and I just noticed in my notes that I haven't gotten that book, or that.
Okay. Yeah, there's one that just speaks so sweetly to that, yes. Mm-hmm.
There were a lot of things that could circle around this point, and one of them was, I think Linda mentioned it, which was our myth of a good death. Yeah, let that go.
But also there was a point in the story where he's with a good friend of his who's, everything's coming out of his body and all these different, he's busy all night long cleaning up this, cleaning up that, moving him here, moving him there. And in the morning, he's exhausted. And the guy says to him, "You're working too hard." And they both sit down and cry because they're helpless. And I think that was a big one in the book for me. A lot of times we're just helpless. Can't make anything different.
Just be there, yeah.
So to get back to Peter's question, and what was popped up from the book when you were just speaking and with your question is it helps to be the one calm person in the room. And when you were asking, okay, how does living in the moment connect with dying? It's last week Jeff had his heart surgery, right? So I woke up that morning wide awake, and I just took the time, and I just laid there, and it's like, I'm going to be the calm person. And when Zopa suggested bringing certain things to our daily practice, which is the commitment, I'm going to do this because it can be of benefit. I don't know how. And so it's like, if I can focus on my breath and not be distracted like usual, I can be the calm person, and this will somehow help Jeff survive his heart surgery. And I don't think I've been that present in my meditation for that length of time in quite a while. That brought it, boom, because it was like, I might be dying, but he might, and I'm going to be present, and I'm going to be focused, and I'm going to be calm, and I'm not going to be whipping myself about it or trying too hard. It's going to be a joyful effort, and voila. Yeah. So, but it was one of the other things in that book. It's like, okay, being a calm person can be of use.
You know, I was a doctor and I saw my share of death, which is always kind of hard in pediatrics, but there's a lot of kids die. And I always knew intellectually that I would die, you know, and I always figured, well, you know, I'll probably be 100 and some, and you know, all this kind of stuff. And then there were 2 accidents back to back, and it just looks totally different now. You know, every day it's clear to me that, you know, this shoulder's not going to get better. It's only getting worse, and I'm not going to feel my feet again, and you know, that headache that comes every morning, that's not going to stop coming just because I want it to stop coming, or I take a pill or something. It's not going to stop coming, and it's slowly catching up. All these broken parts just don't fix themselves like they used to. I mean, when I was 16, I was really badly hurt, and your body's young then, and it fixes itself, but when you're 69, it doesn't anymore. And you know, it's so real now. It's every time I look in the mirror, every time I have to do something, every morning I wake up and I think, what am I going to do today? And you know, what's really worth spending one of these days on? Because there's not that many more days. I mean, maybe there's a few thousand days there. That's great, there are. But maybe there's not, you know? And what is worth doing, and what's really going to pay to do? And so that's what it kind of took for me to really take this to heart and know that this was real for me, and this is really going to happen to me. And sometimes I just will lay back and close my eyes and imagine that it's happening now. And I try to prepare myself a little bit that way. You know, what if it were just like right now? You know, what would that feel like? What would that be like? And I think that's helpful, you know, to do that. So it's kind of where I am right now.
Part part of being our age, of course, is that our friends are our age too. And I have a close friend who just received a difficult diagnosis, and my next door neighbor has been working with a condition that, you know, she doesn't know how it's going to turn out. And I have a friend whose mother is so far along that we don't ever know, you know, the next day whether she'll be with us. And the reason I'm mentioning all this is because, first of all, it creates in me an understanding that my petty daily duties are really not important if, you know, in comparison to whatever I can do to make some bit of comfort for those people or to just accompany them. And also, it's creating I feel like they're doing me this. They're the point people for me. They're the people who are showing me how to do it, you know. So, you know, with a lot of grace, I have to say. And so I have gratitude and feel less sort of, you know, at sea about it.
So this is kind of confessional, but more maybe on the lighter side a little bit. So I have to say one thing that would always really bother me is when they would report that the oldest person died, because you're like, is that newsworthy, really? I mean, it's shocking, really, that the person was 114 and they died. You know, what a surprise, right? But now, in case any of you are really stressing out, I just want to let you know that I heard about some other older person who died, and it's sad, so we could mark this occasion now, that no one born in the 19th century will die any longer. So they're all dead.
Oh. Thank you.
There could be someone who's eating yogurt in the Ukraine, though, somewhere, right?
I think this brings up, we need to keep a sense of humor, even in death. I think that's great, Peter.
Zopa told, this is brief, Zopa's mother, who sounded like a delightful person, was like 105 when she died. And Zopa, you know, Zopa was sad, but she wasn't surprised. But she said her sister was extremely distraught that her mother had died at 105. And Zopa said to her, "What? Did you think she was going to live forever?"
I have a little thing in my sewing room that says, "We'll be friends." What does it say? It's we'll be friends until we're old and gray, and senile, and then we'll be new friends.
Thank you for all the sharing. Any last words? Till death.
Since we work with rebirth. You know, there is no death do us part. You know, sometimes that's disconcerting. You know.
It's also reassuring. Mm-hmm. It also means, you know, there's a responsibility with that. There's next life coming. We got the tools. Yeah, let's get busy. So, if there are no other comments or good jokes, well, all we have left on the agenda is a little Bardo recitation. And so we'll proceed to there. So, does everybody have a copy of the 6 root verses? If not, I have a few extras. And that in Longchenpo's.
So the Bardo aspiration?
Yeah, Longchenpo's Bardo aspiration. Right. So first we're going to do that, and then the Bardo aspiration. Do you have that one too? You don't have anything, Peter. You're make sure I have my own copy. Yeah. Which movie?
The Canadian Film Society movie on the Tibetan Book of the Dead.
Oh, right.
That really gives you a feel.
Yes. Yeah, it's very good. I haven't watched it for decades, but time to do it again. It's beautiful. Yeah. It's there. Okay, so I love these 6 root verses. They're just so pithy. It's like they're such nice reminders. So we'll first recite these, and these are taken from Mind Beyond Death by Tsogchen Punlap, a wonderful book. Ema, at this time when the bardo of this life appears to you, abandon laziness, since there is not time to waste. Establish yourself in the meaning of hearing, contemplating, and meditating without distraction. Taking the path of appearance, mind actualize the 3 kayas. Ema, at this time when the bardo of dream appears to you, abandon the heedlessness of the delusory sleep of a corpse. Enter into the nature of mindfulness and non-wandering. Recognizing dreams, practice transformation and luminosity. Ema, at this time when the bardo of meditation appears to you, abandon the accumulations of distractions and confusion. rest in the nature of non-wandering and non-fixation, free from the extremes, achieve stability in the development and fulfillment stages. Ema, at this time when the bardo of death appears to you, abandon attraction, attachment, and fixation to all. Enter into the nature of the clear oral instructions without distraction. Transfer into the unborn space of self-arising awareness. Ema, at this time when the bardo of Dharmata appears to you, abandon all shock, terror, and fear. Enter into the recognition that whatever arises is pristine awareness. Recognize the appearances of the bardo in this manner. Ema, at this time when the bardo of becoming appears to you, hold the one-pointed mind of intention to continuously perform excellent activity, closing the entrance to the womb. Remember to reverse samsara and nirvana. This is the time to be steadfast and to hold sacred outlook. Abandoning jealousy, meditate on the guru and consort in union. I think I'll put these on my refrigerator as well. Okay, and so this is Longchenpa's Bardo Aspiration. Beautiful aspiration prayer. Om Ahung, please pay heed, O conquerors of all directions and all times, by the goodness gathered in the threefold times and what I now possess, from the time without beginning up until this very day, may enlightenment be reached by me and everyone without exception. In every incarnation, while this is not attained, may we see the basic essence, great perfection's deepest path, Dharmata, directly, the increase of visions and the culmination. May the body made of matter then dissolve into a mass of light. May we not be faced with anguish at the interrupted life. May the gurus and the yidams, all the dakas and dakinis, appear in actuality right before our very eyes. Grant empowerment, predictions, and then guide us to the realms divine. Since everything conditioned does not last, our death will surely come. The breathing stops, the mind and body go their separate ways. May we not become bewildered, start to cling or be attached, but remain in Dharmakaya's natural and continuous state. When the time has come to shed this body, this material illusion, the perceptions and the skandhas, gross and subtle thoughts all cease. May we all be liberated, just when mind and body part, unbewildered into all-pervasive vastness, timeless space. Then, one into another, true elements dissolve, a lucid state, unmixed and pure, with lights of the 5 colors, without creating concepts. May the Vajra chains and colors 5 be undivided, unified, perfected in Dharmata's realm. When wrathful demons, as enormous hungs and other forms, when billion universes fill with roaring sounds of hum, may we recognize the vital point. The hung sound is an empty knowing, and realize that every empty sound is like an echo. When hordes of Yama's executioners surround us, attack, slay, kill, escape, give chase, may all this panic naturally dissolve. Freed from illusory displays of being struck with fear and terror, may we know them to be forms of yidams, both the peaceful and wrathful. When the hordes of wrathful Harukas come swarming forth from the blazing blissful palace in the mansion of the skull, may we not behold them as the forms of dreadful demons, but instead gain insight of the heart essence's pithy meaning. When the multitude of peaceful ones dissolve in basic space, from the palace of the jewel dome that is within the heart, the moment the displays transpose and manifest as forms of light, may awareness then dissolve into the brilliant expanse. When the wheel of channels at the throat becomes unfastened, with 1,000 roaring thunderclaps of terrifying laughter, may we recognize the peaceful, wrathful song of Ah and Hong, and free it as the non-arousing sound of empty knowing. When the red and white, the means and knowledge are converging at the heart, from bliss-sustaining palace in the secret center, untainted, may this natural state of blissful emptiness cause winds and mind to be absorbed within the central channel. Then, as we remain within Dharmata's bardo state, may consciousness not stray into oblivion, but having realized the vast and timeless purity, the natural liberation, may we settle in the other empty state where phenomena dissolve. Upon seeing the reality of Dharmata directly, may the conceptual remedy, the fixated mindfulness, be freed, and realizing timeless purity, the nature of phenomena exhausted, may we stay within the non-conceptual state devoid of constructs. When the dome of fivefold wisdoms opens up its doors, from the palace of five-colored interwoven rainbows, and the realm is filled with deities and spheres, may we meet the fivefold kayas and the five wisdoms. When we meet with the five kayas and the five wisdoms in the incandescent palace that is the empty Bindu's lamp, may we, freed from doubt, that vacillated, dualistic feeling, fully merge into Samantabhadra's timeless state. Having met the fourfold lamps, mind's essence, face to face, in the incandescent palace that is the empty Bindu's lamp, may we reach spontaneous presence with a perfect steadiness and transpose to space in Rigpa's state of vastness. May the luminous and empty lamp of Dharmakaya shine. May the Dharmakaya emptiness of knowing be attained. May Sambhogakaya's ceaseless dual vision be attained. May Nirmanakaya's perfect natural knowing be attained. Having reached the triple kayas, may we work for others' good. This completes the aspiration for the bardo of dying and Dharmata that liberates through hearing, written by Kunken Lungchen Rabjam. Dedication. By this virtue, may I quickly realize Mahamudra and establish all beings without exception in this state. Thank you. Thank you all. Yes. Where did I find that? Peter knows where it goes.